apparently, Dos, you're the big dog where you work when it comes to the car park. So
Yeah.
Is that a deliberate thing that you do, Dos, just to really stamp your ground a little bit?
It falls under one of my responsibilities that I inherited.
You've got an official duty for that.
I'm not.
You would.
You're the fire warden too, aren't you?
Yeah.
He is. I knew it. I knew you
I'm not
would
chief.
be.
I'm not chief.
Oh,
but I am a.
Does that annoy you that you're not the chief?
No, I'm good with it.
in for a penny, in for a
fine.
pound. May as well be chief. All right, let's get to some takeaways.
QB2,
boys.
deputy.
Dos, why don't you kick us off, Chief, with your first takeaway?
Chief.
Deputy Chief.
Deputy. Now, I'm glad you mentioned Diggs before because actions over words. And I remember, I think it was the start of last season, we sort of thought about some
awards?
end-of-season awards, and one I suggested was actions over words, too much yap, not enough production on the field. Stefon Diggs, the pre-game chirping with Jair Alexander, which goes back to the Vikings-Packers rivalry when he was in Minnesota, and also there was a bit when he was playing for Buffalo as well. Keyshawn Nixon was involved pre-game. But then Diggs, after every catch today, just chirping away at defenders, looking for contact with Packers defenders to try and draw an unnecessary roughness penalty or some sort of penalty, which is fine, but you need to deliver and you need to produce. 5 receptions for 23 yards, and one of those was for 17 yards on 7 targets, so 4 catches for 6 yards. When Nico Collins is out, as a veteran wide receiver,
actually? Just get it done?
Can you step up as a veteran in a young locker room with a lot of young players on the field and actually produce? Because right now, 59.3 yards per game, that's the lowest since his rookie season. He hasn't been producing at all.
He wasn't great last year either. He started off real hot, and I think he had a real nice patch, which... If you look
when the Bills kicked off at the start of last year, they won 4 in a row. Yeah, Diggs.
If you look at his stats from last year, you say, "Oh, it's a pass mark. It was a decent enough year." But if you actually looked at them, the end of the back half of the year wasn't that impressive.
Playoffs.
And in that back half of the year, he went a patch of 6 out of 7 games where he went under 50 yards.
And now he's continued that again this year. And you throw him into a team, like you said, without Nico Collins, with CJ Stroud, who's a pretty good quarterback, you'd expect to see some 100-yard TD kind of games.
The Texans had quite a few players out, more on defense, but they had a couple out on offense as well today. Young team on the road, big spot, big game. Like that sort of stuff there's not any good for your locker room, for your culture, and doesn't help your team at all. Produce on the field and deliver.
Yep, fair point.
I like it. I can't add anything more to that. Let's go to a place that does seem to have a good culture. In fact, 2 good cultures, because last week I asked, can the Lions still win the Super Bowl without Hutch? And after today, it seems that the answer is yes. But also, I think the Minnesota Vikings are also clearly still a team that is worthy
They're a good team
of the NFC Championship. Both of these teams, plus the Packers, I think the Packers are half a step off those two at the moment, but there wasn't much that broke your confidence in either of these teams today. Now, for Detroit, you alluded to it earlier, Dos. It was symbolic that the game ended with a sack because we're worried about where the sack's going to come from with no Hutch. So it's unheralded second-year linebacker Trevor Nowaski. I mean, what a name that is. Not only last week he got his first sack of his career, now he gets his second one, consecutive weeks, when they needed it most. They had 4 different guys with sacks today. Jack Campbell, Josh Pascal, Malcolm Rodriguez. Jared Goff was near perfect. Gibbs stepped up when Monty was down. St. Brown was up while Laporta's been uncharacteristically down compared to his first year. Brian Branch was electric. Kicker Jake Bates, he's sinking clutch. He hasn't missed a shot at goal, a field goal this year. They've just got people everywhere, and most importantly on that defense that, well, they can cover it. It's only 1 week, but this was a big test against a really, really good team, and they actually had it.
Well, their offense is deep, like you mentioned. If like David Montgomery's having a bad day, Gibbs steps up. They've got enough receivers. Sam Laporta hasn't had the best year or the year that we were maybe expecting.
He's been banged up. He's had a couple injuries.
Amara can step up. Jameer Gibbs can take a few receptions. Jamison Williams has shown flashes. What we're worried about is their defense without Hutch. And now, like we mentioned last week, without Hutch, maybe this means that we'll see more of a team effort.
4 guys
and that's what happened. 4 guys had 1 sack each. That's perfect. That's what you want to see every single week.
Now, it'll be up and down. It won't be great every week, but at least they've shown they can do it. And the Vikings, I guess you wouldn't be too disheartened about that loss today. Yeah, you want to beat your rival, but they still showed enough that they are well and truly in this hunt.
And I think the Vikings, once TJ's back as well, Hutchinson, That'll be that'll be a different offense once again. Because at the moment, obviously, they're relying on Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison's up and down a little bit, but Hutchinson was one of the best tight ends in the league last year when he was playing. And we forget that this guy, they're missing one of the best tight ends in the league.
He's close to returning. He's not far off.
They were almost talking about this week, so he's not far now.
I love how Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator, when it was they had the last crack at it, Minnesota, with 1 second left. They got the illegal formation. They spiked the ball. Then there was illegal formation penalty. Dan Campbell going ballistic on the sideline. The referee thinking that should have been game over. And instead of dropping all the defenders back, allowing potentially a Hail Mary from Sam Darnold or some lateral action, Aaron Glenn just sent 4 up. Sack. End the game.
And to give Dan Campbell his dues, he was actually quite polite to the referee. He wasn't actually going off. He was just trying to understand what was going on. He just went up to him, pointed to his ear, said, like, can you explain it? I genuinely don't understand what's happening. Right? It was confusing. Well explained by the rules analyst at the time. I can't remember which one it was. Gene Steratore, perhaps?
I don't know if it was Gene.
Was
it Dean Blandino?
They got great names, don't they? They all sound like New Yorkers. They all from New York?
I don't think it was.
I don't think it would be New
Jersey?
Yorkers.
I don't think it was Dean, but that's all right.
Hawley, hit us.
Right, well, I'll go with the Pittsburgh Jets game. First off, the Jets fired Robert Saleh. In his 5 games, they were averaging 17 points against. Since he's left 2 games, they've had 60 points put on him. I mean, hey.
With their old defensive coordinator.
Are we beginning to realise that maybe a certain quarterback might have been a little bit toxic? Zach Wilson had the Jets 4-2 at this same point of the year last year.
Is that true?
That is true.
That seems unbelievable.
I think I saw it on Instagram, so I hope it's true. And someone wasn't pulling
Did Zach
my leg.
Wilson really have? Can you double check that, Dos? I mean,
I think he did. I remember we talked about it, saying if Zach Wilson can play at a good enough a moderate level, then he can take these guys to the playoffs.
Was it like an exaggerated version of the Fields thing where he's playing well enough and they're winning?
It was.
But Wilson was worse than Fields, obviously. But is that sort of the similar scenario?
They weren't putting up points.
No.
They put up
They were 4-3.
4-3. Okay.
Well, were they 4-2 after 6 games?
No, they were 3-3.
Oh, they were 4-3 after 7 games. Then.
There you go. Well, still better than
Close enough. Better than what the current Jets are
Better
going to be.
than the moment.
Ipso facto, Wilson over Rodgers.
Wilson over Rodgers. The other side of it is the Steelers. With Russell Wilson, Dos, I have them as one of my Super Bowl favourites. With that defense, with Russell throwing the ball around,
Well, it's a little slim in the AFC, Hawley, so...
There's probably 4 teams that are there. I think I'm looking down at a KC v Steelers AFC Championship game.
Or not Baltimore.
No.
Ooh.
I'm looking at Steelers. You can't go past KC at the moment. We had our doubts, but they're coming routed.
KC Steelers. That'd be like a 13-10 win for one of them.
No, with Russell.
I suppose they did
mate.
score
Russell's putting up
37
30 every week. This defense, though, it's a scary defense.
Yeah, look, it is, and you can't deny that. And look, I may have been wrong all along, and Russ is the missing piece. He may just be. And, you know, you got to give him a chance. They did today. Tomlin clearly has confidence in him, and it was a pretty good start outside of that first quarter. So,
well, you boys are bagging me all year. Oh, Russell's only hardly an upgrade at quarterback, you know, and Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. What did Dos say? They'll go from 8 wins to maybe 9 as a bit of an upgrade?
Can I just caution you not to go too hard on
I'll go hard.
the answer after 1 week? Remember what happened with Daniel Jones?
I'll
Remember
go
what happened
hard.
with Daniel Jones 2 weeks ago? You said he's back.
I'm going to make the call. That's why people listen, because I'm telling you right now that Pittsburgh are a Super Bowl favourite.
Look, I can't argue with it. I mean, I don't think that they're not a Super Bowl favourite for me, but they certainly have a chance to go deep. They certainly have a chance. And if Russ is as good as
Give
he
us
was
another
today,
couple of weeks and they play like this, then
yeah, okay.
They got the Giants next week, the Steelers, as I mentioned before. So
watch them lose.
Steelers should be
Oh, yeah. And Daniel Jones will be back. All right, Dos.
No, because it's a prime time game, and Daniel Jones does not win prime time football. Kurt, I think he's 1-14, 1-13.
Okay, Dos, hit it.
Yeah. Now, Hawley, your coach in New England, Gerard Mayo,
Not happy with him, are you?
calling players soft in his post-game presser.
Did he?
Mm.
Who was he referring to? Didn't name him.
I don't think individual names were dropped.
Okay.
But
Sorry, I ruined your momentum. Keep going.
Anyway. But you know what? They had a chance to turn over this roster in the off-season. They had $70 million in cap space. And I remember Chris Hall sitting here saying, what's going on? Why aren't we spending some money on our O-line or giving Drake May a genuine. Well, at the time it wasn't Drake May, but there was a good chance it was going to be Drake May or Jaden Daniels, depending on how the draft. It was going to be a rookie quarterback.
Help him out a little bit.
To help him out. And collectively, the O-line is the worst in football at the moment.
Even after they paid Mike Onwenu.
Yeah, Mike Onwenu gave him a contract extension.
I'm astounded by that, Dos.
Who was allowed a career high.
Oh, no.
Career high
Oh, no.
pressure rate this year.
Oh, no, he hasn't.
So he got paid and he's performed the worst he has in his career.
Oh, Mickey O. I'll call him Mickey O.
Mickey O. But, they could have brought in some veteran wide receivers. They could have brought in some tackles with experience, some guards with experience. But no, dress the defensive line, linebacker position. No. Kept all the same players who obviously were drafted under the Belichick era. Which,
Got rid of Judon.
Which they can play. Well, they traded Matt Judon, who was probably one of your more productive players. And Robert Kraft just doesn't spend any money. He didn't really spend money in the Belichick era, to be fair, in free agency. And when you got Tom Brady there as your quarterback, you probably, that sort of lack of
Covers
spending.
many sins.
Yeah, covers that potential lack of spending in the offseason and free agency, and then you're relying on the draft. But the Patriots haven't hit in the draft, especially in the first round, for a long time. And, this offseason has to change because they're going to have a lot of cap space again. They have to spend money and invest on that O-line for Drake May. And Drake May's been pretty good the first 2 weeks, coming into considering what's in front of him and who he's throwing to at the moment.
Sorry,
you go.
You got me. Do you think it's because they looked at this year as a pure development year, and what's the point of spending all of this money on guys that might get us to 6 wins instead of 3? And next year, all right, we've got Drake. He's had a year under his belt, half a year. He's playing well. Now let's load up around him and have a crack.
I agree. I actually don't mind it. I understand your point, Dawson. It makes sense, but rookie head coach, he knows the Patriots. He knows the stamp that he wants to leave. He has a year to really assess what they've got and what they haven't. Let's not spend unnecessary money if we don't need to. Let's assess what we've got in the building and then attack it from next year. This year was never going to be a playoff season. Like I said, yes, maybe you could bolster the O-line a little more, but if Drake May is a pass mark, they know where else they can bolster.
The only thing you would have done is if someone popped up that you can't live without. You need him and you sign him to a 4 or 5 year deal and you think, all right, this is for the next 4 or 5 years. Otherwise, you miss out on a, once in a generational type of signing. But they obviously weren't worried about it. And like Dos said, they've never been worried about it in the past, and that's just how Robert runs the franchise.
The concern I had, though, and where there seems to be misalignment, was, we're going to play Jacoby Brissett. So we're not going to invest in, skill position players. We're not going to invest in the O-line. But that only lasted 6 weeks. Now we've got Drake May coming in.
Yeah, but that was just to hold back the dam and try and develop May and not rush him in, because you don't want to throw him in week 1 if he's not ready and if your team's not ready to support him.
Yeah,
I guess it got to a point where Jacoby wasn't making a
Yeah.
positive impact at all.
Well,
so
he couldn't throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field.
So we had to play Drake. That's where it got to, and they have to play Drake with what they've got around him. And he's in the 2 games he's played so far, he's proven that he can throw the ball. He can score a couple of TDs, and he's actually looking okay. And that's with $80 million in the cap still.
He can score them in the
mil.
USA and in England.
He can score them anywhere in the world.
International touchdown thrower. Like it, Dos. 49ers. When do we start worrying? Ayuk, probably ACL. How do they replace him? Is this a shot that they can't get back now because CMC's out indefinitely? Ayuk's out. Pearsall debuted today, 3 of 5 for 21, but he's a rookie playing his first game. Samuel was out with
also
illness.
shot 8 weeks ago
Yes.
in the chest.
Yes. I wasn't bagging him.
No, I'm just...
It sounded like 3 or 5 wasn't
Yeah,
good
you
enough
just sorta-
after he'd just been
the-
shot in
I
the
was
The
chest.
just
tone
saying-
it was delivered in was sort of
Evaded.
like, why did you
Avoided.
put up 120 and 2
He
today?
was avoiding death, and he's come back with 3 receptions. Kurt's not happy with that.
Well, fair enough. Maybe I could have
Caleb
delivered it
Williams
differently.
did that. It would have been a solid game.
My point was, you can't expect him to
No, you
dig
can't.
you out of a non-CMC or Brandon Ayuk hole. That is what I was trying to portray.
I agree.
George Kittle, hopefully he stays fit, but he's only one avenue. The cracks started to appear today. Bosa gave away a penalty he wouldn't normally give away. Trent Williams got ejected for punching a guy in the helmet. Yes, he was punched in the helmet first. I concede, but still.
It was also at the end of the game when it was over.
Yeah, but these are things that you don't often see from the 49ers from memory. Lenore, I mean, he's pretty undisciplined, that guy. He punched someone else as well, lucky not to go. Jake Moody's out, so they brought in last year's Green Bay
Anders
offcast,
Carlson.
and he missed a field goal today, so that's another problem.
Missed a point after too, which is par for the course for Anders.
Purdy was the worst I've seen him in a long time, almost as bad as his 4-pick effort against Baltimore.
Worst
week
passer
17.
rating of his career, Brock Purdy today.
There you go. We know he can bounce back. He did that last year after that Baltimore game. They're 3-4. After all of that, they're only one win off the lead of the 4-3 Seahawks. But is it time to worry? Are there deeper issues here than just, a couple of guys are out, but they're San Fran, so they'll win?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
It is worrying. Without Brandon now, mind you, Brandon hasn't. The positive you can take out of it is he hasn't been playing well.
Not at all.
So it's not like they're
Is it
missing his
one-
120 a week.
Was that one decent game this season?
I think he had 140, 150 one week, and that was about it. They're not, like you said, Kurt, they're not going to miss out on 100 yards a game from him. So to replace that, Ricky Pearsall can step in and probably replace what Brandon's been giving it at the moment. But
What is 3 or 5 for 21? No.
but what he's given you is whatever, 40, 50 yards a game, and you're losing. So you need someone that can give you the 100 yards a game to get you back into that winning situation. And now CMC, what I've been reading, looks like maybe week 10 to 12, if things are going well. I think he's come back after he had his little stem cell injections or whatever they did to him in Germany.
Goodness.
They didn't have that for.
I've asked Kurt to.
Yeah.
I've still got the itinerary ready to go. I'm heading over.
Chris Hall wasn't as lucky to travel to Germany a couple of years ago, but
Calf and Achilles stem cells.
if he is back week 10 to 12, I imagine he probably works into it slowly. But that's a huge in now that Brandon Ayuk's out. I thought without CMC they can probably manage because Jordan Mason was playing quite well. But now without Brandon as well, this starts to get a little worrying.
Do they win the division? Yes or no?
They probably don't now.
DOS?
Yeah, they'll still in the division.
Okay.
Deebo Samuel left. He was sick.
He was sick.
Left the game in the first quarter. But yeah, Kyle Shanahan's he was frustrated visibly on the sideline today. Just didn't seem, when they got a big play and they got down to the red zone, it was an uncharacteristic like mistakes on offense today by the 49ers. And they came up against a very, very, very good defense in the Kansas City Chiefs.
Fair point.
Was that your foot I just kicked there,
Yeah,
Ollie?
it was.
I mean, you're a long way away from me. You must have long levers. We had this problem last week when we were like 30 centimeters from each other face to face. I can't believe you're making contact with me from the other end of the...
I need a bigger table. Big boy.
Sponsor money roll in. I'll get it sorted. Now, last takeaway of the week. Of the episode, I should
Of the episode. Carolina fellas, they're just really bad.
Yes,
I mean,
they
it's we thought that maybe Bryce Young was the sole problem. And Andy Dalton came out, had a good game or two. The Red Rocket, whatever you want to call him.
The Red Rifle against the Raiders.
The Red Rifle against the Raiders. But as we look back, it was just the Raiders. I think, is there any point in not playing Bryce Young for the rest of the season? If Andy's going to put up that kind of performance, why wouldn't you just roll with Bryce and see
depressing conversation.
see if you can find something in there now that he's had a few weeks off?
DOS, what do you think? Should they play Bryce? What do they do here?
What do you got to lose?
Yeah, I'd play Bryce Young now. You got your little bump from playing Andy Dalton. If Andy Dalton was playing consistently well, yeah, you'd keep him in. But
Do you try to trade for another quarterback just to try something out? Is there any point in going after like a Mac Jones just to?
Then you're effectively telling Bryce that he's third string.
He's completely done. Yeah.
So,
I think it's time to bring Bryce back in, give him the rest of the year. If it doesn't work, then you look elsewhere. That's all there is to it.
All right. We'll wait and see what the quarterback whisperer in Dave Canales can do with Bryce and a second crack or third crack, whatever he's up to. All right. That's the show, boys.